In just a minute. All right. Good morning, everyone. It is now 9 o'clock. I now call the March 21st, 2024 San Diego Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board meeting to order at 9 o'clock a.m. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that members Powers, Spencer, and Rodriguez have notified us that they will be absent from today's proceedings. Alternate member Engelmann will be participating on member Powers' behalf. All remaining board members are participating in person today. Member Gonzalez.
Present.
Member Engelmann.
Present.
Member Rodriguez. Member Spencer. Chair Schlick.
Present.
Thank you. I would ask the following individuals, please identify yourselves for the record. Hearing Board Counsel.
Emily Helm, Senior Deputy County Counsel, Counsel for the Hearing Board.
Air Pollution Control District staff.
Mary Maloney, Civil Actions Investigator for the district.
William Jacks, Chief of Compliance for the district.
Thank you. I will now swear in those that wish to provide testimony on any item on today's agenda. This includes petitioners, respondents, and APCD staff. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in the matter before this hearing board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Schlick.
Yes, we will now move to non-agenda public comments. Public communication. This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to the board on any subject matter within the board's jurisdiction, but which is not an item on today's agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public that wish to address the board on non-agenda public communication today?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. We have received no request for members of the public to address the board under non-agenda public communication. However, I would ask members of the public that have requested to speak on this item here in the conference room to please approach the podium at this time, and those members of the public that are joining us via teleconference, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen or by pressing *9 now. Chair Schlick, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to provide a non-agenda public comment on today.
Wonderful, thank you for that update. Let's see. So we will now move to approval of the February 8th, 2024 San Diego County Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board Statement of Proceedings minutes. Before we proceed, Madam Clerk, have we received any requests from members of the public that wish to address the board today on administrative item B?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. We have received no requests from members of the public to address the board under administrative item B. However, I would ask members of the public that have requested to speak on this item here in the conference room to please approach the podium at this time. Those members of the public that are joining us via teleconference, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the Zoom screen or by pressing *9 now. Madam Chair, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to provide public comment on administrative item C. I apologize, correction, B.
Thank you. Wonderful. Is there are there any questions or concerns from members of the district or the board members about the minutes from the last meeting?
I have none.
None.
Okay. Is there a motion for approval?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. There is a motion by member Engelmann, seconded by member Gonzalez. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. Member Gonzalez,
Aye.
member Engelmann,
Aye.
member Rodriguez, Vice Chair Spencer, Chair Schlick.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion passes with all members present voting aye, with the exceptions of member Rodriguez, Vice Chair Spencer, and members Powers who are not present for today's meeting.
Wonderful, thank you. We will now move to the petition before the board today, 4527. San Diego County Air Pollution Control District, County of San Diego abatement order against respondent New Leaf Biofuel. I believe it's a stipulated one. Before we begin discussion for petition 4527 regarding New Leaf Biofuel, Madam Clerk, have we received any requests from the members of the public that wish to address the board on petition 4527 today?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. We have received no members of the public, wishing to address the board under petition 4527. However, I would ask members of the public that have requested to speak on this item here in the conference room to please approach the podium at this time. Those members of the public that are joining us via teleconference, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions provided on the screen. You may also indicate that you wish to speak on this item by using the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen or by pressing *9 now. Madam Chair, seeing no hands raised, there are no members of the public wishing to provide public testimony on this item today.
Okay, thank you. So let us hear the update. We customarily proceed by hearing an update presentation from the APCD staff, and then the respondent will be able to present an update. We have representatives from New Leaf Biofuel today. Jennifer Case is present, yes, and so let's proceed with the district.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, for the record, my name is Mary Mahoney and I work as a civil actions investigator with the district. Mia, if you could please display my slides. Thank you. Today's update is being presented approximately 3 months after the implementation of New Leaf's reduced operational changes affecting both their North and South Plant operations. The reduction in operations was announced by New Leaf last October, implemented in December of last year, and has been in effect since the start of 2024. The operational changes have included a permanent shutdown of the manufacturing operation of biodiesel at New Leaf's North Plant, and a reduced volume of used cooking oil processing, along with a reduced number of processing steps at New Leaf's South Plant. New Leaf's service of collecting and treating local restaurants' grease trap waste occurring at the North Plant remains unaffected by these operational changes. The district has witnessed that most of the recent odor surveys have shown more odors being found at the lower intensity levels of very faint, and often no odors are found. The changes that have been implemented by New Leaf do seem to generally be successful at abating nuisance odors. However, there were some occasional instances where the district observed faint level odors, and one day where the district observed distinct and strong odors. In addition, the district has received public complaints after the operational changes were implemented. Some of the remaining faint, distinct, and strong levels of odors may be the result of truck activity, which is an intermittent activity that may explain the observed pattern of the odors generally improving, with occasional instances of more intense odors being periodically observed. The district and New Leaf have met 4 times since the last hearing board meeting on January 11th, and both the district and New Leaf agree that the most meaningful reduction in abating any remaining odors is to focus on truck activity and to get the new permit issued for the water and grease trap waste operation that remains fully functional at the North Plant. Note that there is an overlap here as the new permit will likely contain conditions for using odor abating equipment and strategies for some of the truck-related activities. Until the new permit is issued, New Leaf and the district agree that it is best to keep the order in effect and to add some newly proposed conditions to the order. I'll now turn to sharing my prepared slide deck with the board for the remainder of today's update. Slide 2, please. Today's update will cover 5 areas: complaints, odor surveys, odor data, newly proposed stipulated abatement order conditions, and district recommendations. Slide 3, please. This slide provides an overview of all public complaints received up until March 20th, 2024, yesterday, and a breakdown of just the complaints that have been received more recently. A total of 82 complaints from 15 unique complainants have been received by the district over the last 2 years and 4 months, 28 months. 32 complaints were received before New Leaf installed an odor reduction system at their south plant in December of 2022. Since then, approximately 16 months have passed and 50 additional odor complaints have been received. Recent complaint trends, as shown on the bottom portion of the slide, indicate a reduction in the number of complaints. October and November of 2023 each had 4 complaints, and then in December of 2023, when the reduced operational changes first began to be implemented, which was around December 20th or so, there was only 1 complaint received. In January 2024, the district received 5 complaints on 3 different days from 3 complainants. These 5 January complaints will be discussed in the next slides. Note that in February and March up until today's date, the district has not received any complaints. Slide 4, please. I now want to bring your attention to the 5 complaints that the district received in January. The first complaint was received January 2nd. The district inspector responded within an hour and conducted an odor survey. The strongest odor detected was faint. Recall that faint is one of the odor ratings on the district's 6-tiered odor scale. That begins with no odors, progresses to very faint, distinct, strong, and ends with very strong odors. Faint levels of odors were observed as being closest to the wastewater and grease trap waste operation at the north plant, and were found along Lincoln Avenue on the same side of the street as the north plant. Across the street from the waste and grease trap operation on the other side of Newton Avenue, where residential homes are located, the odors were found to be only very faint. The inspector sent a follow-up email asking New Leaf if there had been any truck activity, and the response from New Leaf was that there was no truck activity and that only the south plant was in operation. No odors were observed near the south plant. Slide number 5, please. The second, third, and fourth complaints were all received January 16th, between approximately 10:30 and 11:30 a.m. The complainants reported that there was an issue with a truck dumping or leaking waste along Newton Avenue with associated odors. The district inspector responded within approximately 2 hours. At the time of the inspector's arrival, the road had been cleaned up. Per New Leaf, what occurred is that a non-New Leaf branded truck picked up rendered oil at approximately 7 a.m. and failed to secure a latch on the vehicle before driving away, causing spillage of oil on Newton Avenue. The error was reported as being discovered after the truck traveled for approximately 1 block along Newton Avenue toward South 26th Street. This incident fits with the understanding that truck activity may be the cause of periodic odor incidents. Slide number 6, please. The 5th complaint was received January 30th. The complainant reported ongoing strong odors that occur off and on, and that the strong odors were occurring again on January 30th. The district inspector responded between 1 to 2 hours later. The inspector observed 2 trucks at the south plant. near Sicard Street, which is the street that divides the north plant from the south plant and intersects Newton Avenue. One truck had an assembly hose attached to the south plant, and the other truck was being washed at the south plant. Only very faint odors were detected at one location during the odor survey. And the very faint odors were detected on Sicard Street between the two plants, but closer to the north plant. Newly reported that only the south plant was operational at the time of the inspector's odor survey. This was the last odor complaint that the district has received. In February and March up to current date, the district has received no other odor. Slide 7, please. On this slide, you can see a summary of the district's 271 odor surveys conducted over the 2-year plus time frame, as well as information about the most recent odor surveys conducted in January, February, and March. These surveys are still being conducted using a fixed odor route with 20 different odor observation locations. The map on the right side of the slide has the marked route of the odor survey with the odor locations. The location numbers in yellow are the locations that the district has been focusing on most closely and are on Newton Avenue. Locations 2, 5, and 6 are at residential homes and are shown in the green boxed area. 2, 5, and 6 are across the street from the north and south plants, which are outlined in red on the map. Locations 3, 4, 7, and 15 are located along Newton Avenue nearest to the plants and are shown in the orange boxed area. Odors found in the orange zone tend to have higher odor intensities than those found in the green zone. Odors in the orange zone have the potential to carry over and cross the street as prevailing winds typically come from the west. In January, the district conducted 10 odor surveys on 8 days. On 2 of the 8 days, faint levels of odors were found in the orange zone. And on 1 of the 8 days, a faint level of odor was found in the green zone. The faint level of odor found in the green zone at residential homes was the result of truck activity from the January 16th date when oil spilled on the road. In February, the district conducted 7 odor surveys on 7 different dates. Faint was the highest odor classification found, and it was found on 4 of the 7 dates in the orange and green zones. On 2 of the 7 dates, faint levels of odors were found in the green zone near homes, while truck activity was observed at the wastewater and grease trap treatment building of the North Point. In March so far, there have been 4 odor surveys conducted on 3 different dates. The highest odor level observed in March was strong, which was very unexpected based on the recent trend of odors staying at faint or below. What happened was on March 13th, Newly had an incident, another spill. This time the spill was contained on Newly's property at the north plant. A strong level of odor was found on March 13th in the orange zone at location 7, which is the location nearest to the wastewater and grease trap waste building at the north plant across the street from residents. Newly reported and the district observed an oil spill between locations 7 and 4 on March 13th. A distinct level of odor was detected at location 4 on March 13th, which is the orange zone area on Newton on the side of the street nearest to Newly's plants. A second odor survey was conducted on the same date, March 13th, about an hour later, and location 4 remained distinct, and location 7 went from strong down to distinct. However, there were 2 locations found on the second survey near homes that went up on the odor scale after an hour passed. Locations 2 and 5 at residential homes went from having no odors to being faint and distinct, respectively. Newly reported that they immediately cleaned up and were investigating what happened. newly reported on March 14th that at the time of the first odor survey on March 13th, 3 trucks were offloading grease trap waste materials at the north plant. No complaint was received by the district due to this incident. Site 8, please. I'm going to share the odor data results, focusing on odor results from only the 3 locations on the district's odor route that are at residents' homes along Newton Avenue. These locations are identified as numbers 2, 5, and 6, and were shown on the previous slide in the green box zone. Odors in these 3 locations have the greatest potential to cause a public nuisance due to the odors being on private properties. The table on the left-hand side of the slide has the odor results from the time before the odor reduction system was installed at the south plant. At that time, odor levels were routinely found to be faint, distinct, and strong over 80% of the time. After the odor reduction system began operating, and up until as recently as March 13th, the more recent odor data shown on the right side of the slide show that the odor intensity has trended towards no odors being found and very faint and faint odors over 90% of the time. Slide 10, please. The next set of odor results have been compiled for odors found along Newton Avenue across the street from residential homes. These locations are identified as numbers 3, 4, 7, and 15, and were shown on the previous line in the orange box zone. Depending on wind direction and strength, these odors can end up at residential homes. The table on the left-hand side of the slide has the odor results from the time before the odor reduction system was installed at the south plant. At that time, odor levels were routinely found to be faint, distinct, strong, and very strong, nearly 80% of the time. After the odor reduction system began operating up until as recently as March 13th, the more recent odor data shown on the right side of the slide show that the odor intensity has trended towards no odors being found and very faint odors approximately 90% of the time. Slide 10, please. On this slide are just the most recent results of odor surveys conducted since the beginning of this year. Therefore, all of these results have been obtained after Newly began reducing its operations. The results displayed on the left are for the odors found on residential property in the green box area previously shown on slide 7. On the right-hand side of the slide are the odors found across the street from residential properties, which correlate to the orange box areas that were shown on slide 7. The most recent data near and at residential properties show that the current trend is to observe mostly no odors or very faint odors, with an occasional faint level odor being found. The combined 4 distinct observations and 1 strong odor observation are all from the March 13th oil spill incident. The results correlate that decreased production levels at the plants are likely contributing to less intense odors, and that the occasional faint, distinct, and strong odors are the result of intermittent truck activity, such as on or offloading cooking oil or grease trap waste. Slide 11, please. Another way to confirm the positive odor trends is to look at the decreased frequency of when the district has been documenting odors at the distinct or higher levels. Distinct odors have been decreasing since the installation of the odor reduction system, when the district initially observed 70 days when odors were distinct or higher. The second dot from the left shows that there were still 44 days of distinct or higher odors being found after the odor reduction system began operating and up to the date that Newly announced that they would be reducing their operations, which occurred on October 20th, 2023. After the announcement, the remaining 11 days in October still had 2 dates where odors were distinct or higher. In November, there were also 2 dates found to be distinct or higher. In December and every month since, up until March 13th, The district had not observed any distinct level of odors. The oil spill on March 13th contributed to the one date of distinct plus odors in March. While this is a positive trend, there are still occasional faint and very occasional distinct and strong odors that can impact the community, especially if they were to become more frequently observed. The district is optimistic that having a finalized permit for the wastewater and grease trap waste operation of the North Plant can help to keep odors consistently abated after the stipulated order terminates and can address some of the occasional incidents that cause stronger intermittent odors. In the meantime, though, the district and Newly have some new conditions to propose to the hearing board to add via an amendment to continue odor abatement. Slide 12, please. I'll now briefly go over each of the newly proposed conditions before the board. Each of these conditions has been discussed by both parties and are ready for adoption today if the board chooses to grant the request. The first two conditions are revised versions of previous conditions. Condition A was revised to explain that all areas of the north and south plants pertain to the conditions of the order. Condition B was revised to have the portable carbon canister in use specifically during maintenance activities that involve trucks, such as using the truck's pump system to vacuum spills or groundwater, should this need to occur in the future. Slide 13, please. Condition C is a new condition. It would require Newly to use two newly constructed movable enclosures during truck activity at the North Plant. These enclosures are being introduced to help direct truck pump emissions to enter the portable carbon canister more efficiently where they can be treated. Condition D is also new and requires that Newly install carbon canisters on equipment used to treat grease trap waste materials at the North Plant. These canisters would contain the same activated carbon that the other odor reduction equipment uses to abate odors. Slide 14, please. Condition E is new and requires Newly to keep the cap system located at the North Plant wastewater and grease trap waste area covered. The new cover has been recently engineered by Newly since the last board update, and they have recently begun using it. Condition F is new and requests to set the next hearing date for August 22nd, 2024. Ideally, this will be the date at which we will have a permit in place. We'll have observed non-nuisance levels and frequencies of odors and may be able to request for the board to terminate the order. This date also allows sufficient time for the district to observe the long-term effect of Newly's reduced operations and allows for odor observations during the hotter summer months before potentially exiting the order. Condition G has been revised to mention the last amendment to the order, which was made in June of 2023. Slide 15, please. Finally, the district proposes that the board grants the proposed amendment to the stipulated order with conditions A through G and schedules a follow-up meeting, which could potentially be the last follow-up meeting for August 22nd, 2024, for an update, possible order termination, and for the potential addition of other stipulated conditions if needed. Slide 16, please. This concludes the status update presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. I think as is customary, if any members of the board have questions for Ms. Mahoney about her presentation?
I do have one question. I'm sorry, I think this is something that I've asked in some way before, but the presence of faint odors continues at the plant kind of on an ongoing basis on occasion. Is that an actionable odor level?
Well, we use a 6-tier odors, scale, so it's number 3. it's something that we can consider to be a problem, especially if it occurs with frequency.
Okay.
To add to that, so on its own, not necessarily, but the frequency, as Mary mentioned, is how you would pair with it. So strong odors, distinct odors on their own could lead to an issue. But multiple very faints or faints could result, have the same result. That helps.
Okay, thank you.
I just have like a really quick observation or comment. Since there seems to be more reports after the OS systems were installed, would that be like a false positive maybe that more people are focusing and reporting because there's less inspections going out, correct?
Well, we've been pretty consistent with the number of inspections, so that hasn't really changed. But regardless of any, amount of complaints that we're getting, we're always having our inspectors do the odor survey at the specified locations, and our data is based on what they actually observe, not what's reported to us. So we're using information that our inspectors are telling us
From the field there?
directly from them, yes.
Yes, ma'am. So that was my only question.
And I had one question. Just for go back to the one with the map. Yeah, so these numbers on the map, if you could just refresh my memory, so we've got numbers 1 through 7, there are sequential, then it jumps to 15. Could you explain the reason for that? Like where are the locations 8 through 14 and?
Yeah.
I mean, are they not relevant to this presentation today? Blah, blah, blah.
Sure. So there are still 20 locations. The map does actually identify the other location numbers. They're much smaller.
Oh, okay.
So, and I might have cut off maybe one of them, but you can see it ends here at 20.
Okay.
And then number 1 is here. And so the numbers actually go in order that the inspector travels.
Walks, yeah.
And so they go along Newton Avenue. And then there's some numbers over here on,
Okay, yeah. I see 9 and 10.
on Sampson Street, and then they come down here, and then they come on Sicard Street in between the two plants, and then loop back around.
Okay, great.
So they go in the order that the inspector is physically traveling.
And so for today's presentation, could you just refresh us on the reason why those ones are yellow and the other ones aren't really highlighted at all?
It's based on wind direction and where the odors are occurring
Okay.
and where the homes are located. So on that side of, on Newton Avenue is where the odors are concentrated. And so that's where we've been, looking and identifying the problem. So we were taking the odor readings at the other locations and consistently finding like usually no odors
Okay.
in those other locations. So we're focusing on where the odors are occurring.
And of those, mostly upwind, locations, I presume also would give some indication if the odors were coming from another source rather than new leaf biofuel.
Yeah, so our inspectors are also, many of them have gone out, on odor surveys, and so they're familiar with the types of specific odors involved. But also they're trained to consider if the odor could be coming from another source and to go upward and downward and observe. So that's something that we are addressing with every odor survey.
Thank
Very
you.
good. That was my only real question that came up. Yeah, so if there's no other questions from the board members, we will move to hear from Respondent and their presentation regarding today's requested amended stipulated abatement order.
Good morning, my name is Jennifer Case. I'm the president and founder of New Leaf Biofuel. Chris White is on the phone. He is not available in person today, but we would request that the board allow him to give the presentation as it was his presentation prepared, and he is more familiar with the day-to-day operations of the plant. So it would be more effective for you guys to hear from him than from me. So he's on the line if you allow that.
Okay, so members of the board, just to give you an update, I was I was contacted by our clerk who had a request from Respondent to allow, let's see, Chris White to attend remotely today, and because he's unable to be here in person due to, you know, something valid. And so that's totally fine, but we need to vote on whether to allow him to basically present testimony remotely. Is he available? Can we see his, can we at least view him on the video so we can assess his demeanor and everything? And we should vote if we're gonna allow him, otherwise we would have this case. And the main reason I allowed him to attend remotely was because we would still have Ms. Case, the respondent, present. Just to recall that during COVID, we did everything online, but since the COVID emergency orders have been rescinded by the state, we are doing things in person, and so we're supposed to be here in person, but we did have a request from Mr. White to be present remotely.
Is he being sworn in or has?
He will be sworn in if we allow him to testify.
I mean, in principle, I don't have any issue with somebody testifying remotely as long as we know who is speaking and that there aren't any legal reasons why we can't allow it.
Okay. Is there any input from our hearing board counsel?
Oh, yes, so the Brown Act requires the members of the hearing board to be here in person. It doesn't address having, testimony provided. Courts do allow remote testimony. I think to your point, often, decision makers want to see, but I think that see the person providing testimony. That would be up to your discretion. Our hearing board rules don't directly address remote testimony, so that's why this needs to come to you for consideration, and so you can, allow it in your discretion.
Okay, so, is there a motion to allow this?
I'll move to allow, yes.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so, there's a motion by member Engelmann, seconded by member Gonzalez, to allow, Representative Chris White from New Leaf Biofuel to testify remotely. Could you please call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Schlick. Member Gonzalez,
Aye.
member Engelmann,
Aye.
member Rodriguez, Vice Chair Spencer, Chair Schlick.
Aye.
Madam Chair, that motion passes with all members present voting aye, with the exceptions of Vice Chair Spencer and member Rodriguez who are not present for today's meeting. Mr. White, I would ask you to turn on your video so that members of the hearing board will be able to see.
Can you hear me?
Turn on your video as well.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes. But can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
And we see you now. Thank you.
And Mr. White, I will administer your oath. If you can please raise your right hand for the swearing in.
I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to perhaps do continuous video. This is I'm in Oklahoma on the side of a road, so this is a somewhat awkward situation, but go ahead with the swearing.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in the matter before this hearing board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Would it be acceptable if I turn this off and put this down so that I can you follow the thing on my other device? It's just.
Yes, and if you would like, we could have a short break, 5 to 10 minutes, to allow you to get into a better situation to present, if you like.
No, I'm fine. I just need to be able to put this down. That's all, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Thank you.
If we have questions for you or Ms. Case after your presentation, we'll ask you to turn on your video at that time.
Thank you. Okay, if we could have slide 1, please, Mia. and go straight to the second one. Thanks. So this is just, I'm not going to repeat too much of what Mary has already presented. I just want to run through where we are and sort of provide some progress along some of the initiatives that Mary has mentioned in her presentation, as well as perhaps clarifying some details around those two incidents that were the cause of some higher odor levels. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to always re-emphasize that we are still tracking all of our information required in the original abatement order and the current south permit conditions. And in addition to that, we are still collating and provide on request. If you go to slide 3, please, or the next slide. Operational information, particularly about the North water treatment operations. Next slide, please. So this is information about the January incident. We did have a third-party truck, and a lot of these, because we've changed our operation completely from December to January, the trucks that are coming are different types of trucks from different carriers. And in this particular case, the driver, they had their top hatch open during loading, and they are watching to see the fill level. But unfortunately, when the loading was completed, the driver did not latch his top hatch. He flipped it over, but he didn't seal it. And so when he drove off, as he went up a slight slope and over a couple of bumps, oil spilled out of the top hatch and made a mess along the road. We did notify the carrier immediately and gave him our environmental cleanup company to contact, and they got there very quickly. And I think, as Mary reported, it was cleaned up, I think, before the inspectors got there. What we've done now is we've required the drivers to sign that they, to indicate that they have closed their top hatch and sealed it before they're able to receive their bill of lading to enable them to depart from the site. Next slide, please. So this is all of the locations. This is really just a copy of Mary's map, but it shows the ones in white are all those other ones, I think, Madam Chair, that you were asking about before, which generally either have 0 or might have, in the entire time of surveys, had 1 or 2 observations of any odour. So obviously we focus on the same sites. We also focus perhaps a little bit more on the 2 on either side of Sickard Street, numbers 13 and 14, because they're adjacent to the truck activity at the South Plant. And if I can just clarify, this might be a good point while we've got this map, what we think caused the odours on the 13th. I investigated, Mary inquired of me that day what had happened, and I investigated. I was informed by the operator, who was still there at the time, that there had been a spill during truck loading, and it was of oil. And that was the only thing that had happened around that time. Now, that operator had not been the one associated with the oil operations that day. The operator involved in oil loading and other operations had left already. And after the follow-up and looking at the amount of oil that was spilled from the truck, and what happened there was the truck driver just gave an amount to fill in and put in his truck that was too much. And it started to come out the top. They immediately shut it down. And it was actually only a very small amount of oil that was spilled. What had happened around the same time is that we were transferring oil from North Storage, which we had to use because our boiler failed at South, and we couldn't process for some time and had to transfer material to North for storage. He had been transferring oil to get it back to South for processing, and had not realized that some disconnections had taken place where he was moving the oil, and that was actually a considerable larger amount of oil that was spilled, but that was actually inside the South plant, inside the containment in the South plant. But we suspect that that may be the main cause of the odor, and that did take a bit longer to clean up than the truck spill, which was actually cleaned up very quickly. So that's as far as, that's as much as we know about anything unusual that happened that day. In terms of the unloading at the water treatment plant, we had the same trucks unloading at the same sort of period relative to an inspection on the 13th and on the 15th. And on the 13th, we got the strong odors, and on the 15th, there were little or no odors. So we don't think it was the water treatment related activity on the 13th. Now, none of that is great, but that activity was a sort of a one-off activity, and it won't be occurring again. And that part of the plant is actually going to be fully decommissioned pretty shortly.
Chris, I just wanted to clarify really quick. You said South plant where that oil was spilled inside, but that was actually North plant.
Yeah, sorry, you're correct. Yeah, North plant.
Thank you in this case.
Sorry about that. So, as I say, both of these things are related to us getting, I guess, established in our routine UCO only processing operations and loading activities. And we are, we don't like to learn by mistakes, but these aren't incidents that are likely to happen again. Could you have the next slide, please? So this is just a sort of a graphical representation of what Mary was showing before, so I won't dwell on it. The green and purple are the ones we don't want to see. The blue is what we do want to see. And I just think that this is for at all the locations with odors. So that was the yellow and the orange from my previous slide. And in the next slide, please. And that is for the adjacent to residences, and the green is faint, red is very faint. And I think I guess what we're at the point of now is where we don't really have odors that were previously considered to be nuisance level. At residences, on a couple of occasions where we have had a high level of report, they've been related in January to a specific incident that we don't expect to ever occur. Next slide, please. So this is just a repeat of that we've had a very significant increase of low or no odor reports. We have, this is not correct because it was written on the day before the 13th, but we've essentially seen a fairly substantial decrease. And I would like to point out that, when you go back a little bit further, you can see a decrease through the end of 2023. And I would just remind the board that during that period, we were implementing quite a few additional measures of control at both South and the water treatment plant during that period. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are now in the process of getting a permit for the water treatment plant. That permit application process was painful to get the required data because of the types of analyses that have to be done, but that has been submitted, and the APCD has deemed that application complete. Despite the fact that the permit is still in process, we've implemented a lot of the operational measures, and they are now well advanced or nearly completed. And we are really focusing on trying to come up with compliance controls, some of which are these measures that the APCD have in the current amendment before the board, to make sure that we are covered and we have a set of rules that are tested that we can add to our permits as they're finalized, so that we end up with a long-term solution and can retire the abatement order. Next slide, please. So these are the additional initiatives that we have, discussed specifically with the APCD. Some of them we may have done in advance of those discussions, but I would like to say that most of these have been things that we have proposed. I think we reported at the last hearing that we have put a solid barrier on our fence line, and I think that's been a quite effective measure. We keep the gate adjacent to water treatment closed at all times, except when trucks are coming in and out. The vacuum pump surround so that we can capture that truck unloading odor more effectively is almost complete. I think it's going to be completed this week. One of them is complete already, the truck top version of it. The compliance record, I will show you the draft of that. We have completed a completely sealing of the front of the water treatment building and installing a solid door to replace the plastic curtains, which were not easy to use or very effective. We've put a cover on top of our cavitation air flotation device. How that works is that it has a pump in it that cavitates and sucks air bubbles into water that's being treated, and those bubbles combined with flocculant capture remaining grease and solids and take it to the top so it can be skimmed off, and the water can be pH adjusted and disposed to the sewer. Now, obviously, if you've got a bubbling tank of probably somewhat odorous water, it can be a potential source of odor. So we now have a solid cover on that. We have installed, I hear today, complete passive carbon canisters on the grease trap tanks. So as they are loaded, the air that is released from the top, vented from the top, goes down through a carbon canister before it's released. We are continuing to do leak tests. We had one planned in February, but we had to replace our boiler at South, and we postponed it because we had to make some penetrations into the wall. But the smoke tester needs parts. We're still waiting on that, and we are going to do that also for the North plant, the water treatment plant, that is. And we did a review of our tank venting at South, and we came to the conclusion that it was not a priority in terms of odor risk, and we had better use our small resources elsewhere. Next slide, please. So this is a data log that we have. This is a draft that we've developed for the water treatment plant. So this will be a digitized log that the operators complete and submit electronically every day. This helps us, to know that it's been done, because we can get an alert if it's not. And it also helps us to get an immediate report of any condition that is not available, and it makes the data a lot easier to access for when we need to communicate with the APCD on what has happened on a particular day. Next slide, please. So there is the plastic screen entryway that we installed as part of the abatement order amendment in the middle of last year. And this is what it looks like now on the right. It's sealed and has a solid door. Next slide, please. That was very difficult to photograph in that confined area, but that tank thing at the bottom is the cavitation air flotation tank. It now has a solid aluminium lid. Next slide, please. This is the truck loading shield, and you can see it looks like a fairly simple device. Well, it is. It is simply a windscreen. That's all it's there for. So it is just has a hose, and you can see the RS connects to that extended hose, and so that goes down over the open truck hatch, and it just prevents any wind being able to blow across that hatchway as the truck is loading and carry odors away from that area. And that's exactly the same principle we're working on for the bottom. It's just to provide a windscreen curtain around the vacuum pump so that we can capture all of the off gas in the odor control system. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of where we are with operations at the moment. We are receiving and generating the equivalent of about 1 truckload of cleaned, rendered used cooking oil per day for 6 days a week. We are looking at possibly reducing those operating days further, but we have not come to a final conclusion on that. And we are now complete with our biodiesel plant shutdown operations, and we are at the final stages of the decertifying ourselves from a methanol handling facility. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary of where we are. I think, we're both reporting the same thing in terms of the odor intensity. We're not satisfied with where we are. We still are implementing mitigation measures. We're not assuming that creating occasional odors is acceptable by any means. We are hopefully in the final stages of permitting for the water treatment plant, and we hope that the conditions will be able to incorporate these measures that we are now putting or already have in place. And I think, we're perfectly happy with the stipulated abatement order amendment. It captures what we already had started and agreed with APCD. And we are in agreement with working to get all these conditions, including any modifications that might be required to other permits,